welcome to the Friday edition of the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. And thank you so much to Shannon Buckmaster for hosting us today. And thank you to everyone who's joined us. We've got Shannon Buckmaster from the Chehalem Valley Chamber of Commerce. We've got Joe Morlock, Superintendent, the Newburgh School District. We have Wendy Valise as a representative of PGE. We have Commissioner Mary Starrett from Yamhill County, and we have an unknown phone number, and then Michael Thomas, the City Administrator for Amity. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. I sent a list of some ideas for conversations, and what I'd like to do is get started by having Superintendent Morlock, just in case he needs to go, let us know and let the community know what you'd like to tell them. And thank you for joining us today. And you need to unmute yourself.
I actually prefer to talk without unmuting. It's kind of a fun thing. It happens all the time. I just start talking because I'm listening to everybody, so that's good. So thank you. I wanted to highlight a big movement that happened in our board meeting this week on the 23rd, whereby our school board passed a resolution condemning racism and committing to be an anti-racist school district. It was really a very powerful moment for us, a turning point. The statements are clear, talking about calling out racism, sharing a value of care and safety for all students, knowing that some of our students live in fear of losing their lives because of the color of their skin, mentioning, of course, recent events, but then beyond that, providing some framework for moving forward to put these ideas into action, into actionable things. And so talking about diversifying our workforce, value and importance of culturally responsive pedagogy and instructional practices, and also reviewing curriculum, say what are the things that we continue to move forward on, that we continue to use that are part of the systemic racism. And so it was really a big, powerful moment, a big moment for the community, and we're moving forward into this difficult and necessary and beautiful journey. So I just wanted to highlight that. I want to thank our school board for the courage it takes to step up and step out and to move on that. So that's my big update. I think we're still working on plans for opening school, all the rest of that stuff. But for me, this was, and I think for our community, this was a really big deal. Again, and it's on our website if you want to look at it. It's in English and in Spanish, so it's available in both languages right off the front page of our website. So you can take a look at that. But just want to give a shout out to that because that's kind of our big news for this week. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. I saw through the proverbial Facebook chain the statement, so thank you very much. I wanted to ask one question, and that is how you have spoken here in Spanish, switching back and forth Spanish and English, and I would imagine that is has a pretty big impact on your community, having a superintendent who speaks Spanish. Can you speak to that? I'm curious, do you? It seems like it's really powerful, but what are your views of the value of that?
So, ¿quiere que lo haga en español o en inglés? Sorry,
both?
I said it. Yeah, I think it. Español, aquí, así lo hago. It is when you make whatever attempt you make to try to connect with people at their most core level, and I will say that language is so much a part of every human because it's what they get from their parents. They hear those things, those the way we communicate, the words that we learn and the words that we learn to use, describe all of our feelings, all of our hopes, all of the things we've ever thought about. When you dream, you don't only dream in pictures, you dream in words. And so being able to connect with multiple parts of our community, we're 20% Latinx, right? And so when we have parent meetings, y yo lo hago en español y lo hago en inglés. So I do it in both English and Spanish. It allows a connectivity. I don't have the same lived experience. I am a middle-aged white guy, right? So I have my own position of prejudice, of power, and all of those things. But at least I believe that attempting to bridge those gaps, and it's a skill that I have, and I'm very very happy to use it because I think it really helps people connect. And we saw that in our data that we took. We did some surveys and some other things, and people are feeling more welcome in all of our schools in our community. They can come. I have meetings with parents, of course, and they're in English or in Spanish. I don't need a translator. I don't need a third person to do that, or an interpreter. I'm a translator. Sometimes I translate my own documents because we can't get them out the door fast enough. So and when we had our technology changeover in the spring, when we had to go to distance learning, they put me on the tech support team because I took tech support calls because I was technical enough to help our families get connected, and I could also do it in Spanish. They finally found somebody else much more qualified for that, but at least it started that way. So I think everything we put out, we do in English and in Espanol every time. So all of our documents go out. So sometimes our messages don't go out quite as quickly because we try to get them all translated, because we want to make sure that people know that we're here for everyone, and it takes a little bit of time, and we'll get it done. But we have excellent staff for doing that and making sure that I do all of the Instagram and Facebook videos also English and Spanish, because it's a way to reach another way to reach people, and I think it bonds us together as humans, for people to be comfortable enough they can ask their questions and they can get a response, and they can know that I have some awareness of their experience. And so I think there's just a lot of value in speaking other languages, and it helps you understand people, and they feel really connected. So we've hired our first Latinx administrator ever. So we've got David Jaimes is going to join us as the assistant principal over at Edwards in our dual language program. You will hear lots from David because he's already actually met with Shannon. He met with our mayor yesterday. He's a very passionate community advocate. So he is going to be such a core part of our team.
Great. Thank you very much for adding.
You're welcome.
I knew it would be an opportunity for you to say a lot of different things, but it seemed really valuable from my perspective. So was at an, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. No, you have to dar valor a los otros también para hablar con ellos, para que se sientan así más confortable con todo. Así que es una conexión diferente. It's a different connection that we can have. So
yeah. Well, thank you. I was at an event with a city councilor from Kaiser, and he said that he's been on the council for 6 years, and it took 5 years to get to the point where the city council meetings are also translated and then broadcast in Spanish. And he felt like that was it was a small thing that was so big for his community. So I appreciated that. Yeah. And I wanted to then include Wendy in the conversation, because Wendy Valise asked about anti-racism resolutions. And so do you want to add to that, Wendy Valise from PGE?
Sure. So I'll from a PG perspective, we have an equity statement that was based on the environment around it. Was actually updated almost immediately to include racial justice. So PG has a statement. In addition, PGE, our CEO, is conducting, she had 5 listening sessions with employees and across the company, and those filled up in literally less than 2 hours. So she expanded it to almost double that number. And everything I can see looks like they're all full. But what the purpose of, from PG perspective and hers, is to listen and learn, and also be transparent about actions going forward. So I think you're hearing about that a lot, is where there's a movement in time, and we can make changes. We can talk about it, but we can also make changes. And I think her intent is to be very transparent, both with employees and with our customers, about the things that we're going to be doing as a company that's committed to doing our part on this front. And on a personal note, as a woman of color, and I am bilingual, is I have had probably a pretty significant amount of my time in the last 3 weeks discussing this topic, and feel really fortunate that my relationships with my colleagues and friends have included how to address it, how to talk about it, and asking for my perspective. And I think people genuinely want to do the right thing and are just looking for how to take those steps. And so I feel really fortunate that, one, I love that Newberg made a statement. And, I know of a lot of others that have stepped forward and made statements. And also that we're having this conversation on this roundtable, because I think there's a lot to it, and there's a lot. Again, I think for me, just because I care very deeply about this, in all of my years, is the first time where I get to express my my passion around this, is making sure that whatever you're talking about, that there is a plan and that you are transparent about how you're going to move forward. So it isn't because it's a hot topic right now. It's because you want to make meaningful changes. And I just work with all of you and just say that I'm happy to be a resource and happy to be a partner, and PG is committed to it as well. So I feel fortunate that I work for a company that's 100% behind this work as well. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you very much. Do we have any questions or further comments on this subject? I know that for me, sometimes I struggle to know what are the right words to use, the appropriate ones for the space. And then I'm like, whatever, I can say the wrong things, it's okay. Yeah, because I do that all the time anyway.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't, the thing is the intent. I think the intent matters, but I do see that there's some gathering around using the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color. That seems to be pretty supportive, at least with the people of color communities that I've been working with.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great, thank you. Any other thoughts on this?
Is there anybody else? I'm just curious because I've been trying to watch to see. Is there any local governments that have made a statement on this that we know of in Yamhill County? And is Yamhill County going to?
Yeah, that was the question. I was actually considering, we have an inclusivity resolution that we passed at the beginning of last year. And it's something to consider updating for sure in light of the death of George Floyd specifically. So, but I'm trying to think, there's the mayor of Amity is on the call. I'm trying to think if there's anybody from the city of McMinnville or others, but not that I know of.
Okay.
Commissioner, can I just jump in here? This is Mary
Please.
Starrett. Can you hear me?
Please. I was going to ask you to, if you could go next anyway, so we can do it.
No, I just wanted a little, sort of a little caveat here, because if there's anything that the board is going to vote on, we've got to limit that discussion because otherwise we're violating public meetings law. So I'd love to have this discussion, but I don't know that this is it if we're together, if the commissioners are together.
Yes, that's a really good reminder. Thank you. And actually, to that end, Commissioner Starrett, since you had both a meeting yesterday with the Regional Solutions Director, I think, and then you probably heard the AOC call, can you give us an update on the state of coronavirus relief funds, funding to counties and cities, kind of that whole range of things, and the public health component? Would you be able to do that?
Oh, okay, I'm going to start with the public health component. And, I'm not sure if you were aware, but there was a question from one of our congregate care facilities, because the state mandates require monthly testing for staff and residents, and they were adding up what this would cost, and the cost is prohibitive. So we're trying to chase down how that reimbursement or have some upfront payment on that would be handled. And I think yesterday on the call, Leah Horner, the governor's office, was saying, hey, we're not really sure, but they're working on that component. And that's a huge piece. The whole congregate care situation, they're looking at testing and the combination of presumptive and positive cases. Those are still being worked out. So it's interesting to see just how much of this is still a work in progress. The other thing I wanted to update everybody, as you know, the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners sent a letter to the governor's office asking if we could have equity with pro sports and with college sports in terms of contact sports, and asked if we could have that for youth sports and high school sports. And we were running up against the clock here in terms of kids needing to start training in July. So we did hear that that they were working on that, and I believe today's call, because they're kind of running together, they said they were hoping to have some kind of guidance and more of a decision on the youth sports as of in the middle of July, because they know they need to get this going. So those are a couple of the things that came out. One of the other things is that only counties and not cities could request an opt-in for a mask policy, so that if different cities had requested, but now they're basically sort of kicking that up to the county level. A lot of questions came up today, and I don't think we got any resolution about food processing and testing and migrant workers. And one of the questions was, why was there no testing, or at least the way I understood it, testing when people were arriving? And that might be something for us to try to chase down. One of the things that Dr. Sidlak said, was a state epidemiologist, was he talked a little bit about testing. And he said that a couple of things, that there really is no value in testing asymptomatic people because of that 14-day incubation. So if you test somebody today and they're negative, that doesn't really mean anything. So that was interesting. So they're talking about only testing symptomatic people, and what's going on in minority communities, that type of thing. So let's see, what else? And then the school districts. That's been a big question regarding why is it that we're requiring the school districts to come up with their own blueprint. So what is the role of the local public health authority? How much are we going to be weighing in on that? So there are the pluses and minuses of having the school districts develop their own plans, and then the county basically going over that. So we don't have schools can have that variance in their guidance because they're all so different. So I have tons and tons and tons of notes. I don't know where to stop here, so I'm going to just stop.
Well, what we could do is we can ask the panelists for questions. Do you have any questions for Commissioner Starrett around what she's talked about? There were a lot of things there.
Oh, and one more thing that's really important is they're going to try to modify the child care ratio to increase the numbers so we can have increased capacity for child care come the fall, because we know that hopefully kids will be going back to school in some capacity. The question was, and I believe going back to Dr. Seedlife, was about a statewide mandate for masking. And he said, look, it's kind of like what we say at AOC, and that is, you've seen one county, that not every county has the same needs or the same concerns. So they were basically saying at this point that didn't seem to be an option. And gosh, I've just got tons of notes. So I'm gonna stop there.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Commissioner Starrett? Looks like Shannon Buckmaster's going for the mute button.
I do. I just have one question about childcare. Is there still any conversation at this point for financial subsidies to childcare providers so that perhaps we can not increase the ratios as dramatically and still keep this as an option for returning to work? I know there's a strong connection just in operational costs, overhead costs, and what that means for the amount of money coming in per child to be seen. But especially if our school districts are taking a more conservative approach this fall, wouldn't we stay conservative with child care centers as well? So did you hear anything about financial subsidies?
I remember early on, this was a question, and Commissioner Kula, I think you might be able to add something to this, but I do remember there was a question as to whether or not child care facilitators were not included in a specific call out for sort of bailout funds. And the answer was at that time was because they were not required to shut down. They were basically limited in capacity. That's what we heard early on.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the conversations around that, but I believe that's my recollection as well. I do know that in Polk County, the county commissioners are trying to figure out a way to somehow use their portion of the coronavirus relief funds. There's another round of $200 million that's being distributed to counties in the larger cities. How to use that in order to get down the cost of and making childcare profitable enough that people can do it during the school year, so that in case there's the cohort means that there are children who are home, so then the parents would have to be home unless they have the childcare. So they're at least talking about that in their county, and I think it's worthy of conversation here. I just don't know what we're looking at for money yet.
Thank you. If I could carry on, please. So Commissioner Starrett, you reminded us of a really important concept that we should continue addressing. When we started having these conversations several months ago, we really believed that this shift in our economy and in our public health and safety culture, we thought it was going to be temporary. So some of these ideas that maybe we got up and thought we could get past without moving on, it's a great time to revisit those concepts and start to create more permanent solutions, unfortunately. But the idea that we had the thought, we played around with it for a little while, didn't think we'd need it, certainly not for a conversation of starting the school year. So thank you, Commissioner, both commissioners.
Thank you.
I was also muted, and I have the power to unmute myself. Any other thoughts for Commissioner Starrett? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Starrett, for that update. And thank you for being on the call, the weekly call with Leah Horner. I would love to go to Mayor Cape of Amity now. Mayor Cape, what would you like to tell people in the community today and here on the call?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I was able to get in. I got in a little bit late there, but thank you, I think, Shannon, for sending out the invite. I appreciate that. And, I've just been thinking a lot lately and listening to and hearing so much of what's going on. And number one, a couple weeks ago, I saw on, I think it was the Today Show, they showed a picture of a person's lungs that had been infected from the coronavirus. And the person had to have a lung transplant. And it was quite remarkable to see the damage that happened to that person's lungs. And it reminded me, it looked a lot like, black lungs that, growing up, we always see those pictures in health classes and whatnot of, to get kids to not smoke and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of similarities, and you could see the damage of the lungs of these people, of this person. So I just, want to remind people, it's not just this ambiguous thing that's out there and there's this virus and people get the flu. I mean, it does cause quite significant damage to the lungs. And so that was a pretty significant image that I remember. And so I believe it was the Today Show. I should probably give them credit for that. And a couple of years ago, I got to serve as the president of the Oregon Mayors Association. And at the end of my term, I kind of was talking about a message that's kind of been important to me as the mayor. And it's still relevant today. And that is, I wish we could all treat each other kindly, right? And I think, Casey, you say that a lot, be kind to each other, right? And my message to the Mayors Association at the time was, let's start being the example. Let us be kind to the employees that we work with. Let us be kind to our constituents. If somebody's angry, take their anger, listen to them, but respond in kindness. And maybe we can start this revolution, this thought of, of being nice to each other. It really isn't a revolution. It isn't a new thought, but I think it's just an ongoing thing. And what I'm getting to is, we hear so many comments, especially for regarding people wearing face coverings or masks or whatever it is, and it gets so not nice, the language that gets used, and on both sides, either no, I'm not going to wear a mask and you can't make me, or the other side is, people calling out others because they're not wearing a mask. And my wife was reading to me a comment that she read on Facebook today of how it was an example of that person's racism and white privilege because they weren't wearing a mask. And I'm like, well, you don't know that. You don't know if that person has one of those underlying health conditions as to why they're not wearing a mask or something. Why can't we just respond in kindness? Whatever if their choice is, let their choice be their choice, and respond in kindness, and you do what is right and what is right for you, and let's get past the negativity and the anger and the frustration, and let's just start being nice to each other. So and I thank you, Casey, for pretty much always ending these calls by saying that. So as far as the city of Amity goes, I don't really have any great grand new updates other than we are continuing to work on our park. It is getting closer. It's not quite yet ready to open up, probably another couple of weeks. But that's the one big exciting thing we got going. So
That's great. Thank you, Mayor. And Salem Kaiser School District?
Probably not too much that I can add at this point. They're still working on stuff. This week in particular, we're really reaching out to all of our staff and try and get a better level of understanding of where we're going to be at staffing wise, who's eligible to come back to work without any issues for being in any of the at-risk categories, who might be able to work remotely part-time and in the office part-time, who would be able to only work remotely, and who is not planning on coming back. So that is the big step that we're working on to help us determine what services we are going to be able to provide. If we don't have the staff, then that's going to make a big difference on what we are able to do. They have announced that we are going to be using the hybrid model, and there's a bit of a framework out there. It's not really set in stone yet. We're looking at possibly K through 2 going Monday through Thursday for half a day. 3 through 12 would be in cohorts, whether that be Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday cohort groups for those grades. And then Friday classes would be primarily your electives, music, art, and or tutoring, and then also offering a online option for those that don't feel comfortable coming to school. So there's a lot there. They're just working on, like I said, the parameters to try and see what they can offer next year. And hopefully, well, I know that by the middle of July, they are planning on releasing to the public what their plan really is. So.
Great, thank you very much. Now I'd love to go to Shannon Buckmaster. What would you like to tell people in the community, businesses, and the people who go to businesses?
Well, I was looking forward to a legislative update on the special session, but everybody's at work right now on the floor. So I have some I don't know if we would call this good news, but maybe less bad news. We have our current unemployment rates from May. They came out yesterday afternoon. So Yamhill County is doing better than the rest of the state, which is interesting. Our unemployment rate is at 13.2%, and statewide, the unemployment rates are at 14.2%. So we're faring a little bit better in our region. Employment levels total fell 8.9% from May of 2019. So that's really the net change we're seeing now over last year. And unemployment claims are down from 4,445 in April to 4,319. So we are seeing people returning to work. That's promising, very encouraging news. One of the issues that we're tracking in the special session is the moratorium on evictions. So an update that, like I said, I was looking for a more official update, but I can say that the commercial and residential eviction moratorium passed out of committee last night. The amendments to this bill include a 90-day moratorium starting July 1st, repayment period of 6 months with both landlord and tenant notification and penalty. It also includes commercial and residential renters. There's an extension for home sales where the buyer will be occupying the home as a primary residence. The moratorium includes no late fee charges, no credit reporting, landlords being prevented from giving eviction notices. There's specific language about how payments must be applied, current rent first, balloon payments at the end. But we're seeing an increased effect on this particular moratorium on business, right? It's another one of those indicators that the temporary solutions that we provided 2, 3, or even 4 months ago now, we're needing more of a permanent fix. So those are the updates. Do you have questions? Does anybody have questions? Yep, simple. All right.
Simple. Yeah, thank you very much, Shannon. Wendy, what would you like to tell people in the community? And you can tell them in any language that you're fluent in.
I think one of the key communications that we've been getting out in multiple languages is that we want to hear from your residents, our customers. There is a small amount of folks that we still haven't heard from in terms of working out some payment arrangements. We just want to work. We want to hear from you. We want to work with you, and we're hoping that we can reach all of them that are struggling in this time. And that's part of. I also want to express that's part of our conversation with them is also connecting them with resources because they do exist, and we want to make sure that we're doing our part to share as much information to help them. That's what I got today.
Great, thank you. And thank you for joining us today. All right, well, I'm gonna go on then to, I don't know who 503-434-7340 is, but I wanna give them the opportunity to speak if they would like. All right,
Hi, Commissioner Kula.
Yes.
Commissioner Kula. Hey, it's Brian Young from Emergency Management. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties finding my mute button. So I'm just listening today. So I appreciate all the input from everybody. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Brian. And thank you for being really our emergency leader in the middle of a marathon emergency rather than a sprint marathon.
Yeah, and I appreciate the support. Everybody's been very kind and patient, and with all the changes that come through. So we do what we can as a profession, and it's been awesome to have the support. So thank you.
While we have Brian Young, our emergency manager, on the call, does anybody have questions for Brian?
I don't have a question, but I just have a shout out from PGE. Brian is outstanding to work with on the emergency planning front, and we're really appreciative of his partnership. So this is just a big shout out to Brian because he's awesome.
Thank you, Wendy. And John is good to work with and fun to work with. All the folks in your emergency preparedness and emergency management are awesome.
Thanks.
Great. Well, while we're doing shout outs to Brian Young, anybody else have one? Come on. I mean, he's running our emergency. That was mostly for Commissioner Starrett because she loves him.
Well, if you want a shout out, I'm always happy to give a shout out. As you know, Brian Young is a sergeant and comes to us from the sheriff's office, so he comes with a unique perspective in that he has had to deal with a lot of the situations that he is now sort of at the helm of dealing with in a more universal capacity for the entire county. So I've seen him hit the ground running and also go over to different parts of the state and really get in the trenches when there have been some significant catastrophic issues that had to be dealt with. He got over there, was a Central Command officer. I don't have the correct title, I'm sure, but went over there and very few people knew that he was basically addressing this out of the county. And in terms of what he's brought to it, the exuberance, there is nothing that he can't address. And so I don't think many people have had the opportunity to interface with Brian, but if you do, you'll be encouraged. Very infectious passion for this job.
Great, thank you very much.
I was just going to say thank you, Mary. If you guys, from all of that stuff, my face is really red right now, so I apologize that you can't see me, but thank you so much for the kind words.
Well, thanks for doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it, and thanks for joining us today. Are there any more thoughts?
This is Wendy again. Well, today's my day. I just also want to congratulate the Newburgh School District Superintendent. You are one of the grantees for an electric bus. So we're really excited about that. Really appreciate all of the partners that advocated for you as well, including Commissioner Kula and the mayor, of course, but we're really excited about that project. It was the only one in Yamhill County, and so very excited about that project for your school district and your students who believe very strongly in this.
Yeah, thank you. I totally missed my opportunity to thank you right here publicly. So we are actually really excited for electric bus and looking at the future of that kind of stuff. Clean energy, and I know we have a lot of kids who are very passionate about this in the schools and of course their community. So yeah, so thank you very much. I failed to do that at the beginning, but yeah, we're super excited, and it's a great opportunity for us. Our bus company is also really excited to look at that as well. So yeah, thanks, and we're looking forward to it.
That is super exciting. When I read the materials that Wendy sent to me about the advantages of electric buses, I was like, oh, obviously it's electric. It's not diesel. It's not propane. That's cool. And then there was the whole thing about how quiet they are, and so that bus drivers can actually hear their students. I was like, oh my goodness. So
yeah, and of course Mayor Cape knows because the other school district was Salem Kaiser School District as well. So I'm looking forward to working with Mayor Cape in that capacity, because we're pretty excited about Salem Kaiser. Which was the only Marion County one. So again, congratulations to Mayor Cape as part of the Salem Kaiser School District student transportation, and they'll be getting not just one, I think maybe two.
Ooh. I didn't know
they're
that.
A little bit larger than we are, so.
Yeah, they're a little bit larger. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you put them all together, it is, I've been through a transition of going from diesel to propane as one of the changes. And that also, just the quietness, when you line up 10 or 15 buses as you're getting ready to do a major loading, it's loud and all the rest of those things. So I'm looking forward to just, as an example, here's what the future could look like for our buses and all that stuff. So great.
Yeah, I know. We are excited about the electric buses as well. I didn't know that we might be getting a second one, so that's even more exciing.
Don't quote me on that one. I have to go check. I just thought yours was a little bit bigger.
And my boss, he pretty much works on that, so I've been kind of pushing behind a little bit, and so I'm excited that we are moving forward with that. And the quiet is good, but I will tell you also it's the bad, because then you can hear what the kids are saying, and sometimes that's not as good. And I know sometimes the kids complain that the bus drivers can then hear what they're saying as well. So I think also it leads to maybe hopefully some little bit better behavior on the buses as well. But it's exciting. And I know we're looking forward to that opportunity as well. And so, yeah.
That'll be great. We're looking forward to learning from both of your school districts and passing along all the lessons learned to a lot of other school districts that were interested and not selected, and given the amount of money that we had. So we'll be looking to you and highlighting you, and it's just a very great collaboration and partnership.
Yeah,
definitely. And in our county, for our the Yamhill, now that Commissioner Starrett is off, I can talk about things now. But I've asked, like, hey, can Yamhill County Transit Agency, can we look at getting electric buses? And so we've had discussions about as our buses age out, having them retrofitted, because at this point the price point is actually fairly close to rehab an older bus as all electric. So that's something that I'm really excited about going forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it does remind me that we do have our Clean Energy Fund grants. The grant process is starting, I believe, right after the 4th of July, and it's open until September. So that's an opportunity for local governments, community organizations to submit projects. And so I would love to see Amity in there, Mayor Cape.
I will make sure staff is working diligently on that and seeing what we can apply for and how we can fit in.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And I can pass along information on that.
Amity is well represented on this call, so. And I must say too that I was on a call with Online Northwest and our economic development folks earlier this week, kind of going over which projects our local internet providers may apply for funds through the broadband fund. And Amity, the Amity rural areas came up as one of their strong possibilities. So yeah, they're planning on working Amity School District, and then there's like a trunk line that goes up in the Eola Hills. So they're hoping to get funding to install all the whatever the laterals out to people.
Yes, and we've our city even passed a resolution supporting the growth of Online Northwest in Amity, and so we're all for that, and we know they've done good things in other communities, and we're looking forward to having that option in Amity. So
great,
and I know the schools love it too. So
yeah, so I'm hoping that as we have more certainty about the funding that's coming, that's not just for county operations, that we can look at where Newburgh School District, Amity School District, McMinnville, Sheridan, where people have really obvious lack of quality internet access before the school year comes around. So because, well, that money needs to go to those very, very important things.
Yeah.
Superintendent.
Yeah, just quickly, we actually got hotspots from 2 different companies, from both Verizon and T-Mobile, because we know that each one of those has different kind of coverage areas throughout the areas that we cover. And, we're not as quite as rural as Amity, of course, but this is a huge public need. The broadband issue around getting connectivity, you can't get a job or pay your bills or do all the rest of these things. So much of that, and so this is something that I would gladly advocate for with the loudest voice, because we discovered even with hotspots, there are areas out there that can't get covered by neither Verizon nor T-Mobile, and so it was a struggle for some of our more rural folks in our district, and we're not again as rural as some other parts of Yamhill County. So this is a true public need that we have to work on very specifically, because this idea of connectivity and quality connectivity, not just sort of spotty connectivity, is hugely important. And so we discovered that through our distance learning project, and I thought our team did an exceptional job. And we drove around, I mean, actually with hotspots in cars, and went to all places and walked around. I mean, we looked kind of goofy, but our team was out there trying to make sure that every single kid and family could get connected if possible. And we just found some areas that it didn't matter. You were going to get a bar maybe, or you might be, the little letter E would show up on your phone or something. And so there's still some areas that are hard to reach. So this is a big public need, and I'm glad to see some movement on it. But it has been years and years, and so it's really time to move this ball, because this is a critical infrastructural need for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing, I mean, I've only been in office for a year and a half, and in that time, many projects have come up. And then we look at the available federal funding, and it was, it had tight windows, and you had lots of requirements, and the projects never met them. But Online Northwest is an example where they said, we have a project engineered here and here and here, if we can have help with the infrastructure cost of it. So, and I had been arguing, yeah, but we need to have internet access that's affordable to people. And the reminder was, when you have really high quality internet access, it's actually one of the more affordable ones. Around us, we have a lot of folks who are using satellite, and it's super expensive and hit or miss. But solid, in the ground or on the pole connections are quite affordable.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. And more to come on that one. And I just wanted to let folks know that the Oregon Health Authority has a new model, an update to their model around what case counts are looking like, and kind of the dynamics around that. And the most optimistic model of the three scenarios is a continued case count, but not dramatic. The other two scenarios are increasing case counts exponentially. It's just a matter of what that rate of exponential growth is. And so I just want to put out there that there's sobering news. We're unlikely in that more optimistic scenario right now. The gentleman who Commissioner Starrett referred to from the call earlier today actually told us that at this point, each of our individual choices about how we respond, by keeping our distance or being closer, spending more time outside, spending more time inside, wearing a face covering or not, will determine the trajectory of our cases in Oregon, which was pretty sobering to me. But it also is an opportunity for all of us. Oh yes, thank you, Shannon. That's the new one.
That's a link to the Oregon Health Authority's report on what our best, moderate, and worst case outcomes would be.
Yeah, and so that's projecting out about 3 weeks at this point to July 16th. And so I just want to put out to folks in the community that this is a time when we all can step up on our own and do what we can, including by wearing face coverings if you're able to. I understand, as Mayor Cape said, staying further apart. And what we've seen in our community is a lot of family and social interfamily gatherings that have shown up as transmission of the virus. So be safe out there, everybody. Trust public health guidance, even if you question it. And send a question to one of the people on this call. If you want to know real information, the folks here can get it for you, and they can get it for you in Spanish and English, as it turns out. So reach out to us. The people who are here to help you. And we will see you next Tuesday, unless there are any final thoughts. All right, stay safe out there. And thank you very much. Thanks to Shannon for hosting us.
Thank you, Commissioner.